Once we've riveted the 803 onto the top of the spar, we're ready to put the counterweight skin on. We simply cleco it back on. Remember, this has been dimpled, and we're ready to just go ahead and put the flush rivets in and hand squeeze them into position. Once all the rivets are squeezed in, you'll notice that the top is movable, and that's fine because this has got to move so we can align it to the skin. We'll go ahead and put the rest of the rivets in, and now it's time to trial fit this to the vertical stabilizer. With our test fit, we went ahead and put some rod end bearings in the top and the bottom of the rudder, and then went ahead and put bolts in. Now what we're trying to check is this gap right here. Now, let's bend this just a little. When you bend it enough that the gap is equal, you can see there's plenty of space up here so that the rudder and the stabilizer can move freely. So that's all we're checking with this test fit right now. Next, we need to finish the trailing edge of the rudder. Now, what I mean by that, the rudder comes to you. Remember, it's bent like this. However, this is not bent closed enough. We have to bend this closed more. Now, to do that, we use a simple wooden jig. And there's a couple different variations, and we'll show you this one here. This was a 4-foot 2x8 that we split longwise. It's hard to find 2x4s that match up. On the back side, we've put some door hinges. This will get bolted to the end of the workbench back here with these bolts we got here. We'll put the skin in here and just push forward and use it like a metal brake and bend the skin closed. So we're going to go ahead and bolt this down, and we'll show you the process of bending that closed. We like to start by placing a small wooden dowel. It's an 1/8 inch wooden dowel down into the trailing edge. Now the purpose of the wooden dowel is so that we don't overstress the aluminum by bending it too sharply. What we'll do is we'll radius it around that 1/8 inch dowel. Next, we go ahead and place our rudder skin in our little wooden metal brake. We've also put some pipe clamps on here to give us some leverage. Just by doing this by hand, you'll never get it done properly. So we put some pipe clamps on it. You want to bring it in all but just a little bit off of the hinges. Now remember, you don't want to press this too much because then you start pressing stiffeners into the skin. Just bring it up, equal pressure. And this takes a little work at it, Then what I like to do so that I don't press the aluminum into the stiffeners is move it out to the very edge and finish it up. Now we want to bring this down so it's just about the same height as our spar. That's pretty good. One more time and we'll have it. Now once you've done your bending, one way to check to see if you've got a nice radius in here is to slip your spar in your skeleton, then put a straight edge on your aluminum and see how the aluminum contacts the straight edge all the way down until it starts the radius around. That's a good bend. If it would be up like this because there's a bow in the back, if you got a gap in there, it's not bent enough. But you can see when you pull it down, it's a nice tight fit all the way down until it gets to the radius. And remember, it's radiused around that dowel rod, so we didn't run the risk of breaking the aluminum. With the dowel rod removed from the rudder skin, we can set the skin aside for a second. Next, we're going to build our jigs. Now, the jigs we're going to make are called V-jigs, and they're to hold the skin and the skeleton in the proper shape while you're drilling. Now, what I mean by proper shape, if you can envision the ends of the skeleton are two triangles. And through the center of that triangle, there's an imaginary line. And that imaginary line, you want to be lined up. If the lines are like this, you have a twist in your rudder. So you want the lines lined up. So how we do that is with V-block jigs. They have the triangle already cut. That imaginary center line is right straight down here and is parallel to the side here. So you've got one for the end, one for the top, one for the bottom. And all you need to do is place these on your workbench and plumb them up, shim them if you have to, put some screws to hold them in your workbench. Then you set the skin down in here, set your skeleton, and this will hold it in the right shape for you while you're doing your drilling. Once we've got our jigs firmly placed onto the workbench and leveled up, and you can shim the corners to do this, we're ready to put our skeleton in. Now, something we did while we had the skeleton pinned to the vertical stabilizer is we drilled and clecoed this little brace in right here. This is holding this at the right angle so it matches up with the top of the vertical stabilizer for us just right. So we'll go ahead and place this in. We've also drawn our line on our 803, so we ought to be able to see that through the holes in the skin. So we're ready to go ahead and place this in. And taking care not to bend that tip end too much, because remember it's at the right angle. Now when we look through here with our brace holding this at the right angle, we ought to see our lines, and we can. Then we want to go ahead and cleco through all our holes, and then we're ready to put side grips along here, side grips along here, and drill the entire skeleton onto the skin. Next we need to finish fabricating the R410. Now the R410 looks like this. It's got the pattern drawn on it that you want to cut, and once you cut it, it'll look like this. We've cut it out here. We've also cut the flange off completely. Then you have to drill a hole, and this is per the drawings. So once you've fabricated that, then we're ready to fit that to the rudder. Once the 410 has been fabricated and the hole's been drilled in it and the end's bent, then it's an easy matter of putting it in place. Just take a couple of the clecos out. The first cleco, the first hole will be left the same. The next three will be reamed out to hold the 410 in. Just goes in like that, gets centered up. Put a couple clamps on it to hold it. And we're ready to drill in here, and then drill through the three holes right here to attach the 410 to the rudder. Now the last thing we need to do before taking this all apart, we have to make these little strips of aluminum out of 032, and you make them out of the scrap that you have. It comes in a trimming bundle, and they'll go right here, and you'll have two of them, one on each side, and they'll get drilled right through the same holes here on the inside, and what they're for is to hold the bottom fiberglass cap on the rudder. So we're going to go ahead and we'll have to take all the clecos out and back drill and cleco this on. Once we've done this, then we're ready to take this all apart, deburr, dimple the rudder, and we're ready for riveting it together. The first thing we had to do was rivet our R410 on, and that goes on the back, remember, and that's got to be put onto the skeleton before it can be put into the skin. Once that's done, the spar and skeleton is put into the skin. It's put back into our jig. We've cleat-coated all on, cleat-coated on both the top and bottom ribs, and we're ready to just start squeezing our rivets in. Now we like to start in the center, and this is where a 3 or 4 inch yoke comes in handy, so you can just reach right around, squeezing them on. Now you want to check your squeezer, make sure it's set right, and we already did that on this one. And from here we're just going to work our way top and bottom and get this line of rivets all squeezed on. Next we come down to the bottom where the 410 is. You'll find that this rivet right here is very difficult to get a squeezer on, and even the buck. So this is a good candidate for a little MK319 pop rivet. It's just a little countersink pop rivet. You have to use a 7/64 drill bit to open up a 3/32 hole, and then that'll just pop right in. The next 3 take CS4-4 pop rivets. We'll work our way right on down. We found with the CS4-4s, if you take your deburring tool and open that up a little bit, that they'll fit in a lot nicer. Then we just want to do the next 3 with the CS4-4 pop rivets. Once we get these 3, then we can just hand squeeze the rest of them right on down using a little bit bigger rivets than what you used up here. You're going to use 3-4s from here on down. And once we did the rivets up at the top, the rudder's almost done. Now, along the very back of the rudder, both top and bottom, is very small. To get those rivets in there, we had to change the head on our squeezer to what's called a no-hole set. Basically, we've got a rivet set that we put in here, but at the top here, there's no hole for a set, and it's just a very tight little set. From here, the only thing left to do is curl this forward edge. Now to do that, you're going to need a piece of pipe or a broom handle or something. We're going to duct tape it onto the edge and actually curl it. Now, you want to be careful not to over curl it. If you over curl it, and then what happens, it meets very poorly. You just want to bring it down a little bit so you can pull it in and get a nice curl to it. So from here we're going to lay it down, duct tape the piece of pipe onto these edges and curl them up. With our piece of pipe duct taped onto the forward edge, we're taking a wrench and putting on it to give us a little leverage, and we're going to curl this right on up. You just want to work it and curl it. Just like that, just a little bit at a time until you get a curl to it. We've now got a little curl to it, and we're going to go ahead and take it off here and do this other side. Once we've got this leading edge all rolled, and it takes a little work to roll it and form it, and you can grab it like this and squeeze it and roll it and get it between your hands and get it to a nice shape. We then use an edge rolling tool, and we put that on it, and that rolls a little seam down it so it fits real tight on the back where the two meet. Where you got skins meet, if they're both flat, when you rivet them, one side will peel up. So we roll a little curl in one, and then when we rivet it, it pulls down real nice and tight. From here, we're ready to just go ahead and, with our pop rivet, start pop riveting this on. just start at one end. Make sure the pop rivet's down all the way. And we'll just work our way right on across now. Before we can finish up, we have to put our counterbalance weight in. Now, I've taken the lead weight and I've countersunk the holes a little bit to accept the dimples that we put in our counterbalance on. So now all we need to do is just put the weight on with the screws and washer and a nut. Same thing down here, screw, a washer and a nut. Tighten them down. With the placement of the counterbalance weight, our rudder's done. We can go ahead and set it aside. We haven't put the fiberglass caps on yet. We'll do that in the final assembly. So we can set this on aside, and now it's time to do an elevator. Building the elevators are exactly like building the rudder. It's just a skin with a series of stiffeners with a skeleton inside holding it in place. Now, we're only going to build the one elevator. We're going to build the left elevator. The right elevator is exactly the same, except for two differences. The left elevator has the cutout for the trim tab. That's why we're going to be doing that. The left elevator also has a cut in the skin here, and that's for the trim tab adjustment. If you're going to have an electric trim, your servo and all, and that gets a doubler plate inside. So we start our elevators by clecoing our spar to the elevator skin, drilling through the holes, moving our clecos just like before. You want to go ahead and take your doubler plate, put underneath, and cleco it in place also, and go ahead and drill those holes. Once those holes have all been drilled, when you take your spar off, remember you want to take one side off, draw your line on the inside so you can measure for your stiffeners. Then we do just like before. We go ahead and, per the drawings, figure out where our stiffeners go, measure, draw our lines, measure for our stiffeners, cut our stiffeners. Now remember, when you get up in here, there's stiffeners in here, but they're just little stubs and they don't need the angle cut on the end. So that's what we need to do now. Once we do that, then we'll be ready to put our stiffeners on, and just like the rudder. Now the area up where the trim tab is going to go, what I had to do was just go ahead and clamp the E606 in place. And from there we drew a line, and that's how we knew how long to make our stiffeners for here. So also where the cutout for the trim tab mechanism, whether it be manual or electrical, goes, there's no stiffener in here. There's one on the top side, but there's none in this area here. And just like with the rudder, once we've got all the stiffeners drilled on, we'll take them off, deburr them, dimple them. Also, you want to deburr and dimple your reinforcing plate, because when we back rivet these on, we'll also back rivet this on. The plate nuts that go on it can be put in at any time. So from here, we're ready to go ahead and take this all apart, clean it up, primer it, and get ready to back rivet the stiffeners and the reinforcing plate on. Once we riveted our stiffeners on, we'll also put our reinforcing plate in here. We went ahead and bent the trailing edge of our elevator, so it's all done. And like I said, this would work for either one. This just happens to be the left one with the trim tab. So for now, we're going to put this skin aside, and we're going to start on our skeleton. We start the assembly of our skeleton by marking our rivet spacing on our 604, and they tell you to keep the rivets as close to the flange as possible, because inside of the 604 will go your counterweight, and you don't want the rivet heads to interfere with your counterweight. Once we've done that, we've gone ahead and Cleco side grip some aluminum onto the side. That's so we can put our 603 on top of it. Lining it all up. We can use this tooling hole down here that should meet with the other one. Line them all up. Cleco side grip that together. This just helps to keep it lined up for us, keep it nice and even. From here, we want to go ahead and back drill through the holes in the 604 into the 603. Once we've got that, we can set that aside for a second. Next, we want to take our spar and go ahead and take our 611 and Cleco that on. And it's just like with the rudder. We're going to Cleco it on and then drill through the holes. We're going to do the same thing to the 610. We're going to go ahead and Cleco that on and back drill through those holes. Once we've done that, the next thing we have to do is actually Cleco the spar back onto the skin so we can fit the 605 down on this end. It's got an angle. Now this is for the left one. Of course, the right one will be longer and have more of a point. But this flange here needs to be bent because this is going to go like this. And right now it's not bent at the proper angle, so we need to put our skin on our skeleton, and then we can bend this flange for the right angle. With the spar Clecoed to the skin, on the right elevator you'd be using the 609. And what you're trying to do is fit it in here, and you're trying to bend this flange so it fits. On the left elevator we're using the 605, and we want it to fit in like that. And you have to look down in here, and you can actually look inside here and see if that flange is flat. And to fit in, and you can put a couple side grips on it while you're looking at it. Just to meet the skin nice. Now this only gets 2 rivets on the inside here, because remember, you're going to have your weldment that goes around here like this. Okay, your weldment will go on like that. So you don't need a whole lot of rivets, and these will actually be flush rivets on the bottom so they don't interfere with the weldment. So once we've got that, we can actually take a long drill bit and reach down inside here and drill those holes or mark them. Now with the left one, the next thing we want to do before we take this out, we've got this little flange here to support the 606. So again, we want to fit the 606 in here, bend this flange, and we can bend them both using the hand seamer. With this, we just put the hand seamer on here and bend it. On this small one, we have to reach in here and bend it like this. So we just want to get that flange bent so the 606 will be on there like that. Once we've done that, we can go ahead and take this apart. We also need to eventually on the other end fit our 603 and 604, but that just gets riveted onto the skeleton. You will have to, however, notch right here. You'll have to cut this right out in here. You're going to have to cut that out so it won't interfere with the spar of the elevator. So from here we're going to take this all apart and drill it all together. Once the skeleton's all clecoed together, here's what it'll look like. Now remember, this is the left one. The right one won't have the 606, and instead of a 605 it'll have a 609 that comes up to here. So from here we're ready to go ahead and take this all apart. Make sure you dimple where the skin will attach. You want to go ahead and deburr everything, primer it, also primer your plate nuts that'll go in here. At the same time, you might want to go ahead and primer your weldment. It's not drilled on yet, but soon it will be. We've gone ahead and drilled our holes in the weldment according to the drawings. So we're going to primer it also, so the next step will be to put this on. So from here we're going to take this apart, primer everything, and get ready for, and not only get ready, but go ahead and rivet it back together. Once the elevator spar has been riveted back together, here's what it looks like. Now remember, on the right one, you won't have this, the 606. It's just for the left one with the trim tab. Once we've got that done, then we can go ahead and jig up our V-block jigs, just like we did with the rudder. And then we're ready to put the skin in the V-block jigs, and we can go ahead and put our skeleton in. Now you got to lift it up and get this down in there a little bit. Once we've got this in the jig, we can go ahead and cleco this all together as far as the holes that we've already drilled. Once we've clecoed along the main spar, then we can come down here to the root end and position our root rib here, and using cleco side grips we can clamp this in place. Once this is clamped in place, this is ready to be back drilled through the holes that are in the skin into the rib. Same thing along here. Once that's in place, we can cleco side grip the 606, and we'll just do them all along here, and then that's ready for drilling. Then we'll come down to the end here, and we'll take a square and just double check our alignment to make sure that the counterweight arm is square with the rest of it. And once that's been checked, we can go ahead and take some side grips, clamp that in place, and it's also ready for drilling. Now that we've got the root and tip ribs done, and also the 606 where the trim tab will go, it's time to go ahead and put the counterweight skin on. And it just slides down over the counterweight arm, tuck it under the other skin, it's been pre-drilled. Now you want to start by putting a side grip clamp right in the top here. That'll help pull it down for you. And then we just need to line it up nice with the other skin. Again, putting some side grip clamps all the way down along it. Once we've got those on, this also is ready to drill into place. Once we've got our counterweight skin drilled and clecoed on, now it's time to go ahead and put our elevator horn on. We've pre-drilled our holes. We placed it in here and saw where we could drill our holes, and then we pre-drilled them into the metal. Then all we have to do is put it in, get it nice and tight. We can clamp it in here and then go ahead and drill it on. We've already drilled this one, but I like to do it this way instead of before we put the skeleton in the skin, because now this has to conform to the shape of the skin, and it will. It'll pull in a little bit if it's off just a tad. Once we've done this, the only thing left to do before we actually rivet this all together, of course we've got to dimple and deburr everything, is we've got to bend this little tab down here where the trim tab will go. Now there's drawings and instructions showing how to bend this over. If you have problems, or if you bend it too tight and it breaks off, what you can do is just cut these little tabs off to the shape that it would be eventually, and you can bend yourself up a small rib and put in there. We're going to try and bend these over right now. We've placed the elevator skin in the V-block jig supplied with the kit. We've also cut the little wedge out, and we've cut the wedge and fitted down inside here. Now we're going to go ahead, we've bent the bottom skin over, and you can see what we did, we pulled it in real tight, pulled those wedges in, with the hammer tapped the bottom skin over. Now we also, before we did this, we took a square and we drew a line on here so we knew right where to bend at and where to put our little wooden blocks. Now to do the top one, since we want this one to look real nice, we're going to start by taking a block of wood and bending the tab over. And then we'll tap on the block of wood, not our aluminum. And that'll keep us from marring the aluminum up. That'll finish bending the tab over for us real nice. Now we don't want to drill this yet. This will get drilled once we put this all back into the skeleton. Now a couple of things we did run into on both the skin and on the 606. These last 4 holes were hard to dimple. To dimple those we had to use pop rivet dimple dies. Also in the center of drawing 5 they tell you that this is going to have skin, then the 606, and then underneath of it's going to be a piece of hinge. So you dimple the skin, you're going to countersink the 606 just on the top side, and then the hinge will just get drilled. So we're going to go ahead and countersink the top side of the 606. Now the trick to doing this is don't take too long doing these countersinks, because this countersink cutter then becomes a router. Put your bit in, hold it in place, countersink, and get out. With everything dimpled, the 606 countersunk on the top, next we want to go ahead and put our elevator horn in place. We can go ahead and cleco and rivet it in place. Once this has been riveted into place, we can then go ahead and put the skeleton back in the skin and the skin back into V-block jigs. Once we've got the skeleton back in the skin back in the jigs, we're ready to go ahead and finish squeezing our rivets on and rivet this together. Now the one place you don't want to rivet, remember, is the top side where the trim tab's going to go, because we've got a hinge that'll go on there with the trim tab. But we can go ahead and rivet everything else in, and everything else you can probably get with a hand squeezer, except for these rivets right along in here. Again, at the trim tab, there's 4 rivets right here, and they get pop rivets. They're the small pop rivets per the plans. There's also a couple places out here on the tip side in here where you can't get in, and those get pop rivets also. Finish your elevator up, no matter whether it's the right or the left one, by go ahead and curling your leading edge, pop riveting that in place, and then the elevator's done. Now if you're working on your right one, The only thing left to do would be your counterweight, and you just simply need to take your counterweights, put up in here, drill your holes and bolt them in. For your left one, however, we're not going to put the counterweight in just yet. We're going to go ahead and make the trim tab for in here. We start the assembly of the trim tab by first bending the trailing edge with our little wooden metal brake that we use to bend the trailing edge of the rudder in the elevator. Then we need to bend these inner and outer tabs, and again that's done using the little wooden V-blocks, sliding that in, putting a little block of wood inside, bending it over. Remember, you want to bend the bottom one up first so the top one goes down over top of it to seal water out. Once we've done that, we're ready to go ahead and drill and cleco the bottom spar, or the spar at the bottom, in. And we've done that already. What we did, we drew our center line and looked through the holes and lined it up. We also put some side grips and clecoed it at the top also, so we could have it all lined up nice and straight. So once you get that in, it'll look like this. The next thing we need to do is our trim tab control horns. That goes on the bottom here. We've got the spar in there. The control horns, now we haven't put any rivets on the end here for two reasons. One, we don't know the final shape, and two, we don't want to interfere with the rivets that are in the elevator also, so we got to mark so we don't do that. Then on the bottom, we need to take our two control horns, and depending on whether you got it for electrical or mechanical flaps, control horns will go on just like this. They look basically the same. The only difference is the length of the arm. You want to go ahead and drill and cleco them on just like the plans call for. Nothing real special here. Once they're drilled on, and it'll be like this, control horn will move back and forth here. Then we're ready to go ahead and drill the top part on with our hinge. The hinge we went ahead and cleco side gripped on, and again we can look down through our lines and see our holes. We've also matched it up on the edge here. Now the hinge has not been cut to length yet. It's still a little long out here on the root end. We've lined it up on the tip end real good, and we've still got both halves of the hinge here. We've also test fitted this to the elevator just to see how it fit and how much gap we can afford in here. Now we're ready to go ahead and drill this on. I'm only going to drill maybe 4 or 5 holes in here right now. The reason for that is I'm going to put 4 or 5 clecos in and then test fit this to the elevator to make sure everything's going to be fit real well. If it doesn't, I can always adjust it. If it does, then I can finish drilling the rest of the holes. With the trim tab clamped in place, you can see how your spacing is here. Remember, your spacing in here, you want a minimum of 1/8 of an inch. And this is also when you're going to want to mark where the rivets on the elevator are so they don't interfere with the rivets on the end of the trim tab. Also want to check your alignment down the side here and your alignment across the top. You also want to sight down this edge to see if you got any twist. If you do, this is when you can twist the elevator a little bit and straighten it up. Once you've got that all ready and all done, you can finish drilling your holes for your hinge and drilling the holes for the hinge of the trim tab itself. Once your hinge has been drilled on and you're satisfied with the alignment, You can see you got lots of movement in your trim tab. Then you can go ahead and mark up here where you want to put your rivets so they don't interfere with the ones in the elevator. Go ahead and drill your rivets where you're going to put your pop rivets back here. And from here, your trim tab's ready to mark this line right here to trim up the hinge. And it's ready to take apart. Dimple, remember where your hinge is, you don't dimple the spar, you dimple the skin only, countersinking the spar, and you don't do anything to the hinge. It'll just go, the rivets will go straight through it. You're ready to primer everything and rivet your trim tab back together. Last thing we need to do is go ahead and place our counterweights. Now remember, it's got a little notch, a little groove in here, and that goes against the counterweight arm where the rivet head should go in there. We went ahead and opened up our tooling hole as our first hole and slid our counterweight in. Now if you need to shape these anyway, a Vixen file will shape this lead real easy. Next thing, we went and we back drilled through the hole, and that was for our counterweight for our second hole. Then our other counterweight will just go on the outside. And once that's on, we go ahead and put our nut and washer, tighten it down, and our counterweight's on. With the placement of the counterweight to finish construction of your trim tab, your elevators are all done. Actually, your empennage is all done. We hope this tape's helped you get through the construction. It's been an easy kit to put together. VANS has engineered it well. And from here, we're going to go on to the wings, and we hope you do too, and we hope to see you at a flying someday.